Trapped spirits released by stone drilling, a true investigation. Some places you're just not supposed to go. You can feel it. They're marked by whispers, by local legends that warn you away. The deep woods, the abandoned mines, the strange rock formations that just don't look right. Most people listen to that feeling, that little tremor of instinct that says you're trespassing, and they turn back. But some people don't. Some people hear a legend and call it a myth. They see a taboo and call it a challenge. And when they break the rules that have held for generations, they sometimes find out, way too late, that those rules weren't just stories. They were seals. This is a story about what happens when one of those seals gets broken. It starts with the hum of a geological drill and ends with something ancient and unseen being set loose. We're going to piece together terrified witness accounts, deep-seated folklore, and the chilling science of fear itself. We'll travel from a remote American hollow to the tin mines of Cornwall and the volcanic plains of Japan, all to answer one terrifying question. What happens when you drill into a stone that was meant to keep something locked away? It all starts with a noise, not a bang or a crash. A sound that has no business being there. Imagine it. You're hundreds of feet underground, surrounded by the crushing weight of the earth. The air is cold, still, and dead. The only sound is the rhythmic churning of a high-powered drill biting into solid rock. Then, you hear it. Through the mechanical roar, another sound reaches your ears, a frantic tapping from inside the stone. This isn't the sound of rock fracturing. It feels intentional, like knuckles on a locked door, desperate to get out. You shut down the drill. The machine goes silent, but the knocking doesn't stop. The Black Creek Project. Our story properly begins in a place that's become a piece of modern folklore, a remote hollow allegedly known as Whisper Gulch. Even the name sounds like a warning, doesn't it? Here, a geological survey team, working for a private company they called the Black Creek Project, set up camp. Their official goal was simple: take core samples from a massive, unique rock formation that dominated the area. The locals, a small, tight-knit community in the nearby hills, had another name for it: the Hushing Rock. And they told the geologists to leave it alone. The leader of the team was a Dr. Eris Thorne. Thorne was, by all accounts, a man of science. He was dismissive of superstition and had zero patience for what he considered backwoods mythology. The local stories about the Hushing Rock were just that: stories, tales of strange whispers on the wind, fleeting shadows in the corner of your eye, and a deep, unshakable feeling of being watched. The legends claimed the rock was a prison, a place where something terrible had been sealed away long ago. To disturb it was to invite misfortune, or a whole lot worse. Thorne and his team laughed it off. They were there to analyze the rock's weird, composite nature, not to entertain ghost stories. They set up their equipment: generators, floodlights, and a powerful core drill designed to sink a shaft right into the heart of the stone. For the first few days, everything was normal. The drill ground through layers of quartzite and a strange, dark-veined mineral they'd never seen before. The team worked in shifts, the hum of machinery filling the gulch day and night. Then, things started getting weird. It started small. Tools would vanish, only to show up in impossible places. The generators, despite being full of fuel, would suddenly fail, plunging the site into disorienting darkness. Team members started complaining of splitting headaches, constant nausea, and a simmering irritability that had them snapping at each other. Those local legends they'd laughed at were starting to feel less like folklore and more like a gathering storm. The breaking point came during a late-night drilling session. The drill was about 200 feet down when it hit a pocket, a void where solid rock should have been. In that exact moment, every light at the site flickered and died. The generator coughed, sputtered, and went silent. And in that sudden, profound blackness, the team heard it for the first time. A sound coming from the drill hole. It wasn't the groan of shifting rock or the hiss of released gas. It was a voice. A dry, rasping whisper that seemed to crawl out of the stone itself. Pure terror took over. One of the younger geologists, whose testimony is the backbone of this whole story, described a scene of absolute panic. He talked about a freezing, unnatural cold that had nothing to do with the night air. He described seeing shapes moving at the edge of the darkness, tall, gaunt figures that dissolved whenever a flashlight beam swept over them. But the sounds were the worst part. The whispering was now joined by a chorus of frantic, rhythmic tapping, the sound of something, or many somethings, clawing their way out. The Black Creek project was abandoned overnight. The team fled, leaving behind thousands of dollars of equipment. Bound by fear and probably some serious non-disclosure agreements, they refused to talk about what happened. Dr. Aris Thorne has never made a public statement. The site at Whisper Gulch is now supposedly fenced off, posted with warnings. But the story didn't end there. It became a modern legend, a cautionary tale whispered among paranormal investigators. The story of the Black Creek Project is a chilling, modern take on a belief as old as humanity. Some things are buried for a reason. The legend of the Hushing Rock. To really get what happened at Whisper Gulch, we have to look past the geologists' accounts and into the folklore that surrounded the Hushing Rock for centuries. These weren't just campfire tales. They were a cultural memory, passed down as a solemn warning. Long before Dr. Thorne showed up with his drills and his skepticism, the people living in the shadow of that stone knew it was a place to be respected and feared. The heart of the legend is this. The Hushing Rock isn't a natural formation. It's a tomb, not for a person, but for a whole host of malevolent spirits. The details change depending on who's telling the story, but the theme is always the same. Centuries ago, a powerful shaman fought a great battle against dark entities that were plaguing the land. Not ghosts, but something else. Spirits of chaos and despair. Unable to destroy them, the shaman performed a powerful ritual to lure and bind them into the rock, sealing them inside. The name, the Hushing Rock, comes from that moment. Legend says that as the spirits were drawn into the stone, the constant, maddening whispers that had filled the valley finally went silent. The land was hushed, but the seal wasn't permanent. It depended on the rock remaining whole and undisturbed. Elders taught that even speaking ill of the rock, striking it in anger, or taking a piece of it could weaken the seal and let the whispers return. Generations grew up with these rules. Kids were forbidden to play near it. Hunters gave it a wide berth. It was a place of profound taboo. The whispers were said to be the most dangerous part. Accounts passed down long before the Black Creek Project speak of people who spent too much time near the rock and began to change, becoming sullen, paranoid, and violent, claiming to hear voices. It's an unsettling echo of the irritability and paranoia the geological team reported. Then there are the sounds, the tapping. The folklore explicitly states that if the rock is ever broken, the first sign will be a sound like the scratching of 1,000 claws from within. That detail is chillingly specific, and it lines up almost perfectly with what the drill team reported. It suggests they didn't just hear a noise, they heard the fulfillment of a prophecy. And finally, the apparitions. The old stories describe the spirits, if released, as tall, gaunt shadows that seem to drink the light around them. Again, this description from centuries-old folklore is a near-perfect match for what the terrified geologists saw at the edge of their failing lights. So, is the Black Creek Project a true story? Well, you won't find Dr. Thorne or Whisper Gulch in any official records. This is what's known as a modern legend, blending plausible details with supernatural claims to create a powerful narrative. But whether it happened exactly as told, or it's a story built around genuine folklore, the core idea is what's so powerful. A stone prison, a foolish intrusion, and terrifying consequences. It's a story our species can't seem to stop telling. The science of fear. Before we write this off as pure folklore, it's worth looking at the scientific phenomena that might explain what the team experienced. The paranormal world is full of attempts to explain the unexplainable. 3 ideas are especially interesting here: infrasound, the stone tape theory, and the very real psychology of being in a dangerous place. First, let's talk about infrasound. This is sound at a frequency below 20 hertz, so low we can't hear it, but our bodies can still feel it. Some research, though it's still an experimental field, has linked infrasound exposure to feelings of anxiety, deep sadness, and even a sensed presence. Could a massive drill, vibrating deep inside a strange rock formation, create powerful infrasound waves? It's certainly possible. The very act of drilling could have created a perfect storm of low-frequency vibrations. This could explain some of the team's symptoms: the headaches, the nausea, the overwhelming dread. One persistent hypothesis in this field, and it's far from settled science, suggests that frequencies around 19 hertz are close to the resonant frequency of the human eyeball. The idea is that these vibrations can cause our eyeballs to vibrate slightly, creating visual distortions or shadowy apparitions in our peripheral vision. Sound familiar? That sudden chill they felt could also be a physiological reaction to the stress induced by the unheard sound. Next, there's the stone tape theory. Now, this is a pseudoscientific hypothesis, but it's a fascinating one. The theory suggests that rocks and minerals, especially those with crystalline structures like quartz, can act like a magnetic tape, somehow recording the energy of intense emotional or traumatic events. Under certain conditions, this recording can be played back. In this model, the hushing rock itself is a recording device. If the legends of a traumatic magical battle are true, the theory posits that the raw emotional energy could be imprinted into the stone. The drilling by Thorne's team could have been the trigger. The immense energy of the drill might have released this stored information, causing a replay of whispers and shadowy figures. They weren't releasing a conscious entity, but triggering an ancient, horrifying memory. It's speculative, but it's a compelling framework. Finally, we can't ignore the environment itself. Mines and deep enclosed spaces are inherently disorienting and dangerous. Pockets of gas can cause hallucinations. The acoustics are bizarre. A simple draft can feel like an icy touch, and total darkness plays tricks on the mind. Our brains are wired to find patterns, and in a high-stress environment, it's easy to interpret a random noise as a whisper or a shadow as a figure. The local warnings had already primed the team to expect something weird, a psychological effect called a perceptual set. When the lights went out, their brains, already on high alert, may have simply filled in the blanks with the most terrifying thing they could imagine. It's entirely possible that the horror at Whisper Gulch wasn't just one thing, but a terrifying cocktail of all three. Infrasound causing the physical dread, a stone tape playback providing the ghostly content, all amplified by the psychological stress of a dark, deep, and supposedly cursed place. Science might not believe in ghosts, but it gives us some fascinating tools to understand why we do. Echoes in stone, global parallels. The story of the Hushing Rock feels modern, but it's actually just the latest version of a tale told all over the world. The idea that stone can trap something, and that breaking it is a bad idea, is deeply ingrained in our collective psyche. Our first stop is Cornwall, England, home to some of the world's greatest hard rock miners. For centuries, Cornish miners have talked about the knockers, or Tommy knockers, as they became known in America. These were said to be small, gnome-like spirits living deep in the mines, named for the persistent tapping that echoed from within the rock. This knocking could be a good thing, a warning of a coming cave-in, or it could be a sign of mischief, as they were also known for stealing tools and food. Miners would leave offerings to stay on their good side. The parallels are obvious: the tapping from inside the stone, and an unseen presence responding to human intrusion. Next, we go to Japan and the volcanic plains of Nasu. Here lies the Seisho Seki, or the Killing Stone. Legend says this rock contains the spirit of Tamamo no Mae, a powerful nine-tailed fox who tried to assassinate an emperor in the 12th century. When she was killed, her spirit was bound into the stone. The rock was said to be so poisonous, it would kill any living thing that touched it. For nearly 900 years, the stone sat there, bound by a sacred rope, both a tourist attraction and a chilling reminder. Then, in March of 2022, the unthinkable happened. The Killing Stone split in two. The rope lay severed on the ground. Immediately, social media exploded with fear that the fox spirit had finally been released. Geologists pointed out that it was likely just natural erosion, rainwater freezing and thawing in a pre-existing crack. But the cultural reaction was pure supernatural dread. Priests were called in to perform ceremonies to appease the spirit. It's a perfect real-world example of our theme. A prison stone breaks, and the first instinctive reaction for many is fear. Finally, let's look at hag stones. You can find these on beaches all over the world. They're stones with a naturally occurring hole running through them. Science tells us the holes are formed by water erosion or bored out by small mollusks. But folklore has a much cooler explanation. A hag stone was seen as a powerful, protective charm. It was believed that if you looked through the hole, you could see the world as it truly is. You could glimpse fairies or see through a witch's disguise. The hole is a threshold, a gateway between our world and another. And that brings us right back to our story. The drill that bored into the Hushing Rock was, in a way, creating a giant, artificial hagstone. It was punching a hole, a gateway, where none was meant to be, opening a direct line to whatever was sealed inside. These stories, whether they're ancient folklore or modern legends, tap into something deep inside us, a fear of the unknown, a respect for old warnings, and the chilling thought that maybe we're not alone. We've looked at the whispers from the Hushing Rock, the science of fear, and the echoes of these stories around the world. But what do you think? Have you ever had an experience you just couldn't explain? Does your hometown have a local legend about a place that's best left alone? Let me know in the comments below. And if you find these dives into the strange and unknown as fascinating as I do, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. So what do we make of the Black Creek Project and the Hushing Rock? Was it a genuine paranormal event, where ancient spirits were freed by a modern drill? Or was it a perfect storm of infrasound, psychological stress, and geological quirks, all interpreted through the lens of a scary local story? The truth, as usual in these cases, is hard to pin down. The story of Dr. Thorne and Whisper Gulch lives in that gray area between fact and folklore, but its power is undeniable. It resonates because it drags an ancient fear into our modern world. It swaps the shaman's staff for the geologist's drill, the ancient curse for a corporate project. But the terror is exactly the same. We disturbed something we didn't understand, and now we have to face the consequences. Maybe the real lesson isn't about whether spirits were released, but about the nature of the seals themselves. The warnings, the legends, the taboos, those are the real seals. They are seals of respect, of caution, and of memory. They remind us that the world is older and stranger than our science can always explain, and that sometimes the smartest thing you can do when you find a place that whispers is to listen, turn around, and walk away, leaving the stone and whatever lies within it undisturbed in the silence.